Hey, hi everyone. Uh, Today we're gonna have Rosario Sanchez. Yeah, it is definitely a pleasure to have her here. So, Rosario, can you tell us a little bit about you?
I am a woman born in Mexico, raised in Mexico, married in the US, and living in the US and working for the border, Mexico and the US. So uh, I am a senior research scientist at Texas Water Resources Institute at Texas A&M University. I have a background on international relations and diplomatic studies, and I did my PhD on water management and hydrological sciences. So I work using both sides of my brain, which is the diplomatic and the scientific, which I think it's been very helpful. I've been lucky to have that training. And I think I have the opportunity to understand both sides of when politicians talk to scientists, I can understand politicians. And when scientists talk to politicians, I can understand scientists. And I think I have the ability to see what might be the problems in communication out there or the gap between policy and science.
And something that I mean, I'm not sure that all of our audience know, but I mean that you have this background in international affairs, diplomacy, um, perhaps more on political sciences, but at the same time in hydrologic science, water resources management. So this kind of technical policy governance institution, which makes it a very valuable there. So how did you get to the Texas Water Resources Institute? What was your path? How did you get there?
It was a lucky path, I guess. It was a lucky call. I've always been interested in the border. I have always worked in the border, not necessarily water, but I have always worked in the border in the Foreign Affairs Service with different types of issues. When I did my PhD on water resources, I tried to use my background, my skills from that, and try to approach them into water in the border, because I believed I was the only one with that background, and it was the only way to compete with the rest of my colleagues that were all very, very highly trained in the scientific field of water resources. So I had to mingle a little bit my strengths and and try to look towards that. So when I started working as a program coordinator for the Water Management and Hydrological Sciences program at Texas A&M, I started working on the border. I wasn't sure if I wanted to concentrate on groundwater, but then I received this call from a good friend, mentor, professor, Gabriel Eckstein. And he was, of course, I admired him, and I couldn't say no to him, but he said, hey, would you be interested in working on groundwater on the border, because there's not many people working on it. And we need to have access to data on the Mexico side. And I believe because you speak Spanish, you could help us with that. And I said, oh, of course. Of course, I had no idea what I was telling him. And I had no idea what I was getting into. Um, because now I'm into, I can't get out. It's like mafia. Once you're in there, you can get out. So it was a lucky call. I started working on that. And then a couple of years later, the Transboundary Aquifer Assessment Program Act was signed by the US federal government, and that released funding to study transboundary aquifers in the border. So Texas Water Resources Institute was the institution responsible for allocating those resources. And voila, I was there. I was the only one working on groundwater, along with other colleagues, Sue Ping Sen in Texas A&M El Paso, and a couple of other colleagues that have been working on that. But it was very focused on Hueco and Mesilla Bowl zone back then. And what we're doing right now is really reaching other areas of the border. We started with Mexico and Texas, and now we're expanding to the rest of the border. So everything started there. Lucky
And
call.
yeah, and also something to highlight is what you mentioned that as Gabe was looking for someone scientifically or technically qualified, it was also looking for a person that understand both of the cultures, nations. At the same time, it was bilingual, and I think something that I've seen more and more is the capacity that now I would say younger generations. I can see it with my students that many of them they are fluent in both English and Spanish, and highlighting that it is very useful. And mostly along the board, there is, I think most people there is almost a given that they kind of understand both.